Hebrews chapter 12, verse 15. See to it that no one comes short of the grace of God, that no root of bitterness springing up causes trouble, and by it many be defiled. It says here, we need to be careful about roots of bitterness in our life. Do you know, a root of bitterness comes when somebody offends us, somebody hurts us, or lies about us, and we judge them. And a root of bitterness gets in the heart. I find this is very common in families. That's the hardest place not to judge. When a father or mother wounds you or hurts you, or a person in your family wounds you, offends you, hurts you, it's very easy to judge that person. And do you know, when we judge, we set up a root of bitterness, and what that does is the Bible just, we just read, it defiles many, many people. How does it do that? Do you know, when you judge somebody and let bitterness get in your heart, it creates an emotional focus in your heart of the very qualities that you hated in that person. And do you know that your soul is like a camera? Unfortunately, a camera reproduces an image of whatever it's focused on. Anybody that's ever been on a diet knows that. The more you say all the things you're not going to eat, I'm not going to eat chocolate ice cream, I'm not going to eat a big steak for dinner. Do you know, all the things you say you're not going to eat, your mind focuses on and gives power to those things, and they become stronger and stronger and stronger temptations in your life. So whatever we focus on, we tend to reproduce. That's just how the soul, the mind, will, and emotions work. And so when you allow bitterness to come in your heart, you judge somebody, you create an emotional focus on the qualities you hated in that person. The consequence of that is that you have a great tendency to reproduce in your own life, or potentially in the life of a person you would marry, the very qualities that you hated in your father or mother. You know, how many times have we heard somebody who's been married 20 years who had vowed in their heart, I'll never be like my father, and their wife will say, you know what, you're just like your father, or you're just like your mother. Someone will say to another person, how does that work? It works through this principle that we defile many. Let me give you a very simple example. Suppose there's a young man growing up and his mother is obese, overweight. He judges her in his heart and he says, I'll never marry a woman like my mother who has no self-control and no discipline, who looks like her. And suppose over here is a young woman growing up who has a very critical father, and she says, I'll never marry a man like my dad who just criticizes everything I do. Now these two grow up with a judgment in their heart toward their parents, with bitterness in their heart as a root, and they marry each other. Without realizing it, this young man is going to see his wife through the image of his mother. This young woman's going to see her husband through the image of her father. And let's say this young woman is a great cook. She begins to cook some wonderful food, but it's a little bit too rich for her. Her husband thinks, wow, she's not only beautiful, she's got an incredible figure. Because what kind of woman did he choose to marry? One that looked not like his mom. And what kind of man did she choose to marry? One who is not critical, who is accepting, loving, and kind. Well, the food she cooks is a little too rich for her. She gains a few pounds. Her husband sees that. Red flags, alarm bells, warning horns are going off in him. Uh-oh, she's starting down that road to becoming overweight, just like my mom. So he tries the subtle approach and he tells her, honey, you know, I saw a new health club open up nearby. Why don't we join it and get some exercise? How does she hear that? Through the image of her father, because of the bitterness in her heart toward her dad. She hears that as criticism, and alarm bells and warning flags go off in her mind. Uh-oh, my husband's starting to criticize me. Now, she doesn't say anything, but it puts added pressure on her. And what happens to women sometimes when they've got extra stress and pressure on their life? You're right, they eat in between meals, and that's what she does. She gains a few extra pounds. Now the warning horns and bells are really going off in the husband, and he says the subtle approach didn't work. He says to her, honey, I've noticed you've gained a few extra pounds recently. Let's go to the health club and work on this. And she says, stop criticizing me. Obviously I know I've gained some pounds. I'm not blind. I'm working on it. Now leave me alone. And he says, yeah, but you're not working on it. You're gaining more. She says, I know what the situation, I'm working on it. Just leave me alone. And he says, well, if you don't do something about this, pretty soon you're going to be just like my mom. And she says, well, if you keep criticizing me like that, you're going to turn out just like my dad. Do you know that there is a cycle that's been set in motion in the marriage of these two people? Now they're defiling other people. And it won't just stop with marriage. They will defile many other people that they work with, people in the congregation they go to, friendships. That root of bitterness will defile many. That's what Hebrews chapter 12, verse 15 says. And if somebody doesn't intercept that couple, we will end up in a couple of years with a very overweight wife and a very critical husband because of the cycle they set in motion as a result of the bitterness in their hearts. So you can't afford to allow bitterness to come in your heart. If someone has offended you, somebody at work, or somebody in your congregation where you go to church, or somebody has offended you in your family, it's critical to come to the Lord and forgive them. Let the blood of Yeshua be enough to pay for what that person has done. So would you just ask the Lord even right now, Father, is there somebody who's offended me that I'm bitter toward? Somebody who stole from me, somebody who cheated me, and I'm struggling with bitterness. Would you just ask God, Father, would you show each one of us? And if God brought somebody to your mind, would you just speak a prayer of forgiveness? You can just say this, Father, that person who hurt me, offended me, they can't pay for what they did. Yeshua, you did pay. And today I acknowledge your blood is enough. And because of your blood, I choose to forgive. And now you say the name of that person. I forgive. You say their name. And let God complete that work in your heart. Would you also just repent of that bitterness? Just say, Father, I repent of the bitterness that I allowed in my heart toward that person. I renounce it and I give it to you. Forgive me in the name of Yeshua. And you know, I encourage you to walk that way every day. The moment you recognize an offense or bitterness, come before the Lord, release it. Let the blood of Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Messiah, be enough to pay for it and forgive that person. I'm sure that even this very day, you may have an opportunity to be tested in that area as you go through your life today. There may be somebody that offends you. Don't allow a root of bitterness to grow up in your heart and defile many. Forgive.